Before we get into this video is sponsored by Pro Guides. If you are dedicated to improving as a player, I highly recommend you check them out. A link in the description.
Your time has come. Hear my song. It is written.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mickey C, aka TheLoLHounds, and today we have a build guide on the highest ranked top lane Karthus player on the Korean server. Currently ranked 330 in Masters. He was previously in Challenger about 1 or 2 months ago, but he has since dropped a little bit. He also has almost 2 million mastery points on Karthus, which is about the 4th highest at the moment, and he has also already played over 1,700 games so far this season in ranked with just Karthus, which is a pretty incredible number. Now, his item build is not necessarily something new or that much different to a standard Karthus build. There may be a few differences here and there, but one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this video is because this guy has a very interesting level 1 cheese tactic that I have never seen before on Karthus, where he steals the enemy blue buff level 1 and then TPs back to lane, kind of like how the Scion players would steal the enemy buffs level 1. I will talk about this a little bit later on in the video, but this video is going to focus on his runes, masteries, item build, skill order, and then his playstyle at the end. So without further ado, let's do this. So first of all, summoner spells, he always takes flash and teleport as top lane Karthus. Onto his runes and masteries. So his masteries, he takes a 18-12-0 page with his keystone being Deathfire Touch. Deathfire Touch right now is by far the best keystone to take on Karthus, so you can't go wrong with this page. As for his runes, against 80 matchups, he takes Magic Penetration Reds, Armor Yellows, Scaling Ability Power Blues, and Ability Power Quints. Against AP matchups, however, he takes Health per Level Yellows instead of Armor. Pretty simple stuff. Now we'll move on to his item build. So he likes the mana heavy item build, with his core items being a Tear of the Goddess and Rod of Ages. I would say the reason he goes for both Tear and Rod of Ages is because he's not playing in the mid lane, and so he's less likely to get blue buff from his team for the mana regeneration mid to late game. This build is also a very strong scaling build, which late game would do some serious damage. So his starting items would always be a Doran's Ring with 2 health pots. Now, if he does do the level 1 cheese where he steals the blue buff and then TPs back to lane, he would back and get 2 extra health pots with the pink ward before teleporting after he does the buff. From there, he would look to get his Tear as quick as possible, followed by the Rod of Ages, always in that order, so he can start scaling, as both Tear and Rod of Ages are scaling items that you want to get as early as possible. An example of a final build he often ended up with would be Seraph's, Rod of Ages, Sorcerer's Shoes, Void Staff, Death Cap, and Rylai's as the last item. He never went with any other items, at least in his most recent games. So that does it for his build. As for his skill order, he would start Q, get E level 2, Q again level 3, and then W level 4. Max Q first, E second, W third, and his ultimate whenever he can. Finally, let's talk a little bit about his playstyle, and first things first, level 1, he is always looking to invade or steal the enemy blue buff, because Karthus can actually do it by himself without smite, thanks to the double damage from his Q and the short cooldown. Now, from the games I spectated, he only ever looked to get the blue buff if he could, but he never looked to get the red buff. Karthus could probably do the red buff just as he could do the blue buff as well, but red buff doesn't really benefit him that much. It would only be good for denying the enemy jungler of his red buff. So I guess you can still do it if you want to, but blue buff is definitely a lot better. So here's an example of what he does. So in this game, he starts on the blue team and then straight away runs to the enemy blue buff. He spots out Icing, does a little bit of damage to him, and then just puts down a ward by the blue buff. Then what he does next is actually pretty interesting and clever in my opinion. He goes mid lane and shows himself. He takes a tower shot and then backs off, which makes him look like he is just going to back and then walk to the top lane. So the enemy would think they don't have to worry about him anymore trying to steal the buff or invading because it looks like he is back now. But he actually goes to the blue buff again and manages to take it away. This strategy obviously now helps him to win his lane a lot easier because he's got the blue buff and also the extra experience from taking the blue buff, and this puts the enemy jungler further behind as well. So there's just huge benefits from doing this. So it definitely is a very clever thing to do if you can pull it off. Obviously he couldn't steal the blue buff every game because someone from the enemy team was defending it, and I imagine a lot of the high elo players actually know he does this because they often come up against the same players. Anyway, let's move on. In lane, if he does get blue buff, he would look to bully the enemy laner as much as possible and zone them from experience. If he doesn't get the buff, he often would just sit back and farm and trade with Q. Remember that Q does double damage if it only hits one target, so if you can manage to hit the enemy champion with a double damage Q, you basically auto win the trade. Karthus also wins a lot of level 1 all-ins if you manage to hit a couple of Qs, so don't be afraid to trade level 1 if the enemy champion is playing super aggressive. Apart from that, he focuses a lot on farming. He always has very high CS per minute each game, mainly because in the top lane he likely would be up against a melee champion, so it is pretty easy to sit back and just farm with Karthus. He often looks to freeze the minion wave just outside his tower, as Karthus doesn't have any escapes from ganks apart from flash, so if you can do that, you would be in a very good position. As for using his teleport, early game he doesn't really look to teleport at all towards the bot lane, usually just uses it for his lane, and if bot lane needs his help, Karthus has his ultimate available to help them without teleporting, kind of like Gangplank. Mid to late game he would split push if he can and then teleport to team fights. Karthus is all about getting in there and doing as much damage as possible before and after dying. Karthus becomes very strong once his tier has been upgraded to a Seraph, as he now has a shield active to protect him from all ins, so he won't die as quick and can hopefully get off a lot more damage. This guy also likes to take as many jungle camps as possible because Karthus can actually do it very quickly, so don't be afraid to do that as well, especially if you can take the enemy camps to further put the enemy jungler behind. So yeah, farming is definitely a key focus for Karthus, as he is a very good late game champion. Anyway, that pretty much does it. That is the highest ranked top lane Karthus on the Korean server with his cheesy level 1 tactic. This is going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, drop that like button. And as always, have a nice day.